All right, everybody. Tonight we're meeting with Patric McCoy. And, I haven't known Patric that long, but I consider Patric a mentor of mine. I like Patric because he's older than me. There you go, Patric. He's 10 days older than I am. And he's certainly wiser. And, he's kind of my conscience about a number of things. And I think he's a little bit reluctant to fulfill that role, but I find him a powerfully exemplary collector. And there's a number of things as a collector that he does that are totally different than any other collectors I know. And, Patric's just a wonderful man. So, Patric, that said, try and live up to that, okay? Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to the webinar. I see you identified me as an aggressive collector, and I was trying to figure out what did you mean? It's like I was going to jump at the people, or what? What did you mean by that?
Well, I think you have a larger agenda than just acquiring pictures, and or you acquire pictures aggressively also. And I thought, I don't find it a perfect word, but I find it a good catch-all. Okay. To throw in a four-word description, when I don't have more space. Okay. And
I'll work with
you're okay with it.
I'll work with that.
Okay, good.
I wanted to just give a little thumbnail of just how I became a collector, and then kind of respond to a couple of things that Mark Moore just said, because it is a different perspective. I'd like to for the audience to come away with that there is another way, as that we were hearing from the gallerist, the dealer concept, but I really am interested in promoting the relationship between the artist and the collector, and I really try to promote it as that is an essential relationship that gets the artist into this other realm, the gallerists, the dealers, the curators, the critics, and so forth. I'm going to do just like Mark did, to start with high school. I went to high school at Inglewood High School in Chicago on the South Side. And I went into high school wanting to be an artist, but didn't stay in that mode very long, and eventually switched over into the sciences, ended up graduating and going to college as a chemistry major, and got my degree in chemistry, and then went on to get a degree in environmental science, and worked with the United States Environmental Protection Agency for over 30 years in air pollution control. So the trajectory, my professional trajectory, has not been in the area of art. But my personal experience has always involved the art. My father was a very frustrated painter, and photographer and furniture designer and architect and all that kind of stuff. So my environment that I grew up in always involved the visual arts. And it carried over to the point that when I was in my second year in college, my roommate was an art major. I'm studying chemistry, he's an art major. And he came back to the room with a lithograph that he had produced in class. And I'd never seen a lithograph before, but I could understand litho and graph from my chemistry background, found it fascinating, asked if I could buy it, and it was the first piece that I acquired and is still in my collection today. I have over 1,200 pieces. In fact, I just bought a piece today, bought some pieces this weekend when I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm committed to buying a piece from one of your students from the last webinar, from Charles Hepner, in the next week. I have, as I said, over 1,200 pieces. I haven't even counted of late. I haven't kept the count current. And over 300 different artists in my collection. And I know almost every one of them. There's maybe a handful of artists that I just bought the work and I don't know them, have no way to get in touch with them, so forth. So it's a different approach than what I heard from Mark, and that it is a relationship between the artist and the collector that's important for me, and one that I want to promote. And I think it's kind of missing from the American art scene, is that what I hear so often is a focus on galleries, critics, curators, the academicians, the museums, and so forth. And the collector is left out of that equation. In fact, I listened very carefully to Mark, and when he was talking about the recommendations that get him to consider other artists, he didn't have collector in that list. He had everybody else but the collector. And I'm thinking, wow.
No, I thought I heard him say collector also.
No, he didn't. Did not. I listened very carefully, wrote it down.
Okay, we're going to check the recording later on.
He said it twice, too.
Okay. I'm not arguing with you, Patrick. Forget it.
All right.
I'm not arguing.
This is the aggressive side. So I find that interesting that we don't put the collector in the equation for promoting the artist. I am involved with an art organization. In fact, I've co-founded an art organization called Diasporal Rhythms. It is centered here on the south side of Chicago. Its focus is to build a passionate group, and I like the word that Mark did because passion was in his equations, a passionate group of collectors engaged in actively collecting the visual art created by contemporary artists of the African diaspora. That's our mission. We believe that this type of activity should be occurring in every type of community in America, whatever the community, how they define themselves, but there should be people that are passionate, actively engaged in collecting the work that is being produced by the living artists of whatever they're called, how they identify themselves. We're starting with artists of the African diaspora. Now, I said I had over 1,200 pieces, and out of that, 90% of them are by clearly artists of the African diaspora. But 10% is by other people. So I'm not making any sort of discrimination or a limitation. I look at everything. I go to all the types of shows all the time, and I like to engage with the artist. If I see work that I like, I am going to engage, see if I can acquire that, if it means something to me. It is less important of what others, i.e. the critics, the curators, and so forth, what they're saying. It is what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing. And I bring those pieces into my home and I display them. All of the pieces that I have, and Paul can witness, all the pieces I have are up. And
they're hanging on both sides of a lot of doors.
Everything is up, able to be seen, and it's always a challenge to bring new pieces in. But this is how I believe it's important to live with the art that you find important, and that I want to constantly be connected to the pieces that I find are important. We, in our organization, are interested in redefining what a collector is in America, because so many people have a reluctance to identify to the concept of what a collector is, an art collector, because they see it as a very unattainable position, that you have to be super wealthy and have unlimited resources, and that you are extremely knowledgeable in whatever is the most current and in art movement. and that you are responding to the curators at the major museums and so forth. And another component that I think is part of the problem is that the collector is identified as being a very, very private individual or entity that you really are not able to interact with that person. They don't really like to have direct relationships with the artists that they collect. And you are more than likely not going to see what they have while they're alive. We tend to think in our organization that that definition is not really very helpful in promoting the artist-collector relationship, or even promoting the exceptional and important work that is being produced in this country. And that we have to rethink it and relive a different way in which the art collector functions in America. We believe that there should be a very public component to being an art collector, that the art collector should have an agency, and like in the list that Mark had, should be out there making recommendations to the art critics, the curators, the gallerists, the art dealers, that they should be looking at certain people that art collector or group of art collectors is collecting. That we should be in that mode of pushing what we think is important for America to see and to engage in. So we also are trying to get people to think that the art, to take on the label of art collector, you do not have to be wealthy. You do not have to have Rockefeller or Getty type money. That you can be a person that is working a 9 to 5, and that you have some expendable income, and that you're able to acquire the visual arts, just as we are able to acquire the musical arts, the literary arts, the poetic arts, the theater arts, the performance arts. We as average Americans can enjoy and be a part of promoting those types of art. We should not feel as though just that the visual arts are outside of the realm of what you can actually be engaged in. And we think that this hesitancy comes from myths that are perpetuated in the educational systems and in the media, that if you go into art, you will starve. It's one of the myths that's out there, that you've got to be crazy to go into this field that is not going to be lucrative or supported. That you are this, you're heading down a path that is not going to be beneficial. And at the same time, there's this other myth that the art that is, the visual art that is created in America is too expensive for the person to buy. And when I started to put those two, in fact, maybe using my scientific mind, putting those two statements together, and said, they can't be true. One of them has to be false, but more than likely, both of them are false, because there's nothing that a starving person is producing that I can't afford to buy. So we started to see that in our organization, that there's these myths that block people from actively being engaged as average citizens from the activity of acquiring art. I've just disappeared.
That's all right. I can still see you, and your lips are still moving, so it's all good.
Right.
You'll probably come back, I hope.
All right. And we believe that we have a purpose and a function within the art scene of America, and we take that purpose very seriously. We have activities on a regular basis that are going to present to the public our view of the artists that we're interested in and that we are collecting, because we always are speaking as an organization out of our collections. We're not just saying, I went to a show and I saw someone's work and I like it. Is that our organization, when you hear a list of artists being presented by Diasporal Rhythms, it is because the members of this organization, enough members in this organization have already collected that artist's work, and we speak in as a group about that work. We are not associated with any particular art institution. We feel free to function with all of them. We feel free to function with all the galleries, to talk to any art and work with any art organization. We want people to understand that the art collector has a role in the art scene.
Role in changing the society. I mean, I think you're really, affecting the community that your group exists in. And I hope, that you're exemplary in making other collectors think in comparable ways. Are you aware of any other collector groups that echo what you guys do?
No. The other art collector groups that I'm aware of are functioning as adjuncts to a major art institution.
Right.
And they are basically set up to raise monies to buy certain pieces to put into that institution. So we're standing alone, and we're artist focused as opposed to institution focused.
I think that's beautiful. Do you know June Spicer and her deceased husband Francis? Did you know them?
No, I did not.
I think they were the kind of collectors who were always paying for something, and they would buy art from me, and they'd say, Paul, I need 12 months to pay for this, but I can't start for 6. And will you hold on to it for me? Are you paying, this might be not an appropriate question, but are you paying for things over time, or are you paying for things pretty much all at once?
I do more of the all at once. One, because most of the artists' work that I'm finding interesting and important is not very expensive. I have purchased from Preston Jackson a bronze sculpture that I did have to pay in 3 installments. But and then I know that there are other members in our organization that do that. And
Preston's one of my favorite.
Are very easy to work with. They don't have any problem with that.
Yeah. There are a number of people who are commenting privately on the chat thing, and maybe you can, I don't know if you should know, it's coming to me, about the Vogels. You're familiar with Herb and Dorothy Vogel and their program? Yeah.
Yes.
And I think they had a similar passion and a similar restricted budget and a similar kind of a visionary ability to relate to the artists. There's this wonderful story I remember in the movie about them buying, going to Chuck Close's studio and seeing something on the floor that they really liked that had a ball of masking tape stuck to it.
Right.
And they took it home and framed it, and they left the masking tape stuck on it, and Close thought that was really funny.
Right. There's a number of couples like that. The Hewitts amassed an amazing collection of African-American art, very important people from the 40s, 50s, and 60s from using that same technique. They knew the artist, they invited them to their homes and so forth. And she was a librarian, and I think he worked in the postal office. I know other couples are like that all over this country.
What kind of art speaks to you particularly? What is it that you, there's a number of trends, I think, in your collection.
Yes, there's a lot of things, and it's hard to say that there's any particular style or technique. Mark was talking about conceptual art being very hot right now and so forth. And I go out and I see it. I'm not very moved by it. I am more interested in things that speak on themes that are important to me, and they can go to the conceptual and abstract and so forth. Then if I respond to it, it's great. I'm interested in cultural themes, women's issues, African American issues, struggle, and things that bind us together. And I actually find the figure as a medium in which to tell every story. Every concept can be, you could use the figure to get that message across. So I'm not afraid of the figure. I don't feel that it is passe or whatever. I think it is right, as contemporary as the most conceptual thing in the world.
Now, there are other people in your group that have significant collections too, correct?
Oh, most certainly. All of them. This is the thing that it's like once we started, then people started coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh, yeah, I'm a collector too, and I have this, and then you go to their home and you're like blown away.
Yep.
But they would have not ever stepped forward unless the initial four of us had decided that we wanted to be more public with our collections than had previously been.
How long has that been? How long have you guys been doing this?
We organized as a 501c3 in 2000. As a not-for-profit in Illinois in 2003, and then in 2005 it became a 501c3.
Now, here's something I don't believe you and I have ever discussed. What's the bigger picture? I mean, if you've got 4,000 works of art in your group, maybe more?
Easily. More.
And you've got the DuSable Museum down the street that has a pretty not particularly representative collection of much of anything?
Well, the DuSable is a museum of African American history. There is no museum of African American art or African diaspora art in Chicago. And so our mission has always been to be moving in that direction. We don't want to start with that because our interest is one, promoting artists,
right.
Two, developing sustainable programs such that once you do say, once you do step up and say, okay, now we want to build something that houses this or create something that continues to sustain and promote and preserve this, then when you have your programs already, people are familiar with them, they are willing to support them, so forth. And bricks and mortar is usually the easiest thing to get. But a museum has always been, from the very beginning, one of our goals.
All right, let's ask some questions here. Anybody want to put up their hand and ask a question? I got another picture of Patric's collection. You could rotate the camera there too, but you know when we were at your home in the summer and Alyssa walked in the door and her mouth hit the floor and I took a picture? I got to find that one. Okay. Does anybody want to ask? Yep. All right, Gina. Gina, go ahead.
Yeah, so what are your programs that your organization sponsors or whatever? I mean, do you put on shows or?
Yeah, we do. We have a collector's home tour where we open up during Chicago's Artist Month our homes for the public to come and see our collections, to see the artists that we are honoring for that time period. We usually select 5 artists and from out of our collections on a biannual basis, and for that 2-year period, we have honoring ceremonies, collectors' home tours, and then we give them money to create new work and then have an exhibition of their work. We just had it 2 weeks ago on the south side of Chicago. So we are, once we've identified the artists that we want to support further, because we've already been collecting their work, but we want to support them further, let other people know about them, then we will have a series of activities. We gave each one of those artists a seminar, workshop. We sponsored it for the public, young students to come and either be trained by them, or they make presentations, they do demonstrations and so forth. So it's a series of activities for a 2-year period that we as collectors are promoting the artists that we're honoring for that 2-year period.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then we've adopted a high school. We did a art book drive and came up with $5,000 worth of really some amazing books that we donated to the school. We're just starting this week a frame drive because the school wants to put up a permanent gallery of their advanced placement artists' work, and they don't have frames, so we're going to do a frame drive for them.
Talk for a moment, Patrick. I'm sorry. Did you want to say more, Gina?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, too. Patrick, talk for a moment about your experience with original art in public grade schools, high schools.
Yeah, one of the 4 founding members of our organization was an elementary school on the south side of Chicago, Arthur Dixon Elementary School. The principal, Joan Chrysler, had been using her discretionary funds as a principal for 17 years to acquire original art to put up in the school. This is not a magnet school, it's not a charter school, it's not a special school, it's just a regular South Side school. And this art is in the hall, above the lockers, in the rooms, the classrooms. The school is absolutely amazing. The art socializes the kids. The parents stand in line to get their children to go to the school, and it's not a special school in the Chicago public school system. The art has the ability to create an environment that's conducive to learning. And I learned a lesson back in 2002 when I saw at Arthur Dixon the art, this amazing original art in the hallway, kindergarten through 8th graders, running through just as normal at school, and they took care of the art. They did not damage the art. They were protective of the art. The school has every year in March an art fair, and they have artists come from all over the country. The children in the school are the docents, and they take people around and explain the art. Well, when I saw this art, this original art, in the hallways of an elementary school, it made me think about the power of the art to socialize people and the power of art to protect itself. Because there was nobody standing guard on it. This is not like in the museum where you have the guard saying, don't touch. I mean, you've got kindergartners and 1st graders and so forth walking, and they are walking perfect. They're not touching it. They're not knocking it over. Wild behavior, none of that. So it made me start to think that we have kind of dismissed or not really recognized just how powerful art is in our society. So I started putting it up. I live in a condominium, and so we have public space and private space. I've got this 1,200 pieces in my apartment, in my condo, but we have these hallways that I started putting artwork in the hallway because of what I saw at Arthur Dixon. And when I first did it, everybody said, "Aren't you afraid that people are going to steal it?" And I said, "No. It's that art has power, and it socializes people, and it takes care of itself."
Cool. Yeah, I think it's pretty nice, and I think you're making a big difference in your community. I think that's wonderful. Michael, you had a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for talking to us. I have a question about your approach. I converted to Islam several years ago, and I've noticed that there wasn't much of a interest in the arts in the Muslim community. And this sounds like something I'd really like to promote. I've been thinking about it, but I haven't really been doing much about it. And I think, do you have like a template or something you can present? Or I guess I don't know how to approach that as an artist. If I'm even the right person to do it, would be number one question. But I see it as a big benefit just because of all the tension, you know, with things in the Middle East and all that. Bringing Muslim artists out and getting that story to be told, presenting a different picture, you know, of the other 1.1 billion, 1.2 billion people that didn't, you know, attack America. I think that's an important story to be told, and art is a great way to do it. But it seems like I don't know how to convince people to buy it, for instance. And I think people buying art would help to promote its production.
Right.
So
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Now, I find that some of your statements kind of confusing. Muslims, I have Muslim artists in my collections. I have not ever seen a problem with that. They have a very strong art tradition. I think, Paul, when you were here, I showed that magazine that I gotten from Saudi Aramco.
Yep, I remember that.
And every month, it's filled with Islamic art. But to answer your specific question, how do you get it to people to look at that type of art? I really believe that the collector has the strongest voice. And in every community, and I think one of the people that asked the question in the first part with Mark was from Wyoming. Every community, there is one that I'm finding. There are artists, there are creative people in every community, and there are people that are acquiring and collecting art in every community. They tended to be private, and they tend to not interact. What you want to get is a handful, 1 or 2, 3, 4, if you can find art collectors and get them in the room together and say, you know, you really should be speaking about what you're collecting and what you think is important. We started with 4, and now we've got a movement. So I am encouraging that you use the collector to do the talking, because people listen to what collectors say, and you have to get this person that is private stuff off somewhere, get them to be comfortable with the label of being an art collector, and then once they are, then they will be your agents. And I think that there are people that are collecting Islamic and art around in America, and they're just basically very quiet about it. I would not be surprised that there is a large number of people that are doing that right now. It's just
I've encountered a number. Just I guess it's not a big trend, or it's not a very public trend.
It's not, but I believe in the grassroots bubble up concept, that you could start with just a very small number of people involved in something and create a real movement from it. You can't expect it to already be big.
Of course,
you start and you start finding out that it's like a ball rolling down the hill. It just starts grabbing on to all kinds of things, and it gets bigger and bigger.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Suzanne, do you have a question? I've unmuted you.
I do. Patrick, thank you for your very inspiring words about your grassroots efforts there. I'm the person that lives in Wyoming, and actually I know there are a lot of people in this community who collect artwork. I don't know how much of it is local artwork, but I guess I'm wondering, you know, from your perspective, you know, would it be too strange if an artist like myself were to call up a collector that I knew and said, hey, you know, I'm interested in, you know, having my work at least be considered by people who collect in this community. You know, the private nature of that, and also sometimes people, you know, they don't want a lot of people to know that they're collecting art, because then everyone's going to be after them. So I guess I'm wondering, is there a role for the artist to play in trying to nurture this relationship that you're talking about, other than having your work on display and having the collector approach you?
I believe it works both. In fact, I became a collector from my interaction with artists and them telling me that I was a collector. Is that originally I did not believe that, even though I was acquiring work. Is that they kept telling me, oh, you're a collector. And then, no, I'm not a collector. Is that I believe in that interaction. I think it's quite appropriate for you as an artist to, if you know that there's some people that are collecting in your community, go and talk to them. I invite artists to come by all the time. In fact, Paul, any of your students that are in Chicago that want to stop by, you are perfectly welcome to come over.
Did you hear that, Amy? People were asking if I would arrange a tour or something, and I said, sure. But, you know, I don't know that I'll get all that organized or not. But, Patrick, you see, this is another example about, you know, you would assume wrongly that a collector with 1,200 works of art is going to be a little bit snobbier than Patrick is, and isn't going to say, come on over, y'all. You know, they're going to say, you know, make an appointment with my secretary. I'll make sure she defers the call.
No, I've got 6 classes coming. One from Columbia College, one from Chicago State, one from the School of Art Institute in the next 2 weeks. They're constantly coming through. The professors in these classes call me and say, I'd like to bring 10 students over. And I said, yeah, come on over. Artists call me up that I have in my collection. They say, I'd like to come by, I need a fix. Is that they get inspired by looking at other people's work. So I just open the door, let them come in, I go and do what I got to do. And they just walk around and they look at work, because you're artists, you really can see what another artist is doing that's very important. You see it better than almost anybody sees it. So I let them come by, and they'll call me up and say, I just need to see some work. And they'll come in, and then they'll leave and say, I'm very inspired, I'm ready to do some work now. So I can remember the woman in Wyoming. I would definitely recommend you call them up and say you would like to see their collection, and just to see what they're collecting and so forth, to talk to them about.
You know, and if they're an asshole about it, they're an asshole. I mean,
exactly.
Duh. So wait, what are you doing, Patrick, about creating an institution? I mean, we touched on that, but we didn't really go. Is that in the offing? Is that going to be in the offing?
It is, but you know, you can't lose sight of what you're trying to do. First, we are collectors, and we're speaking about artists that we're interested in, we want to promote, so forth. That's your first thing. These other things, they just naturally will just fall into place. We have in the future the concept of creating an institution, but we don't want to put that as our primary goal. It is a goal. It will come about.
Okay.
If it becomes about in the next 5 years, great. If the next set of collectors that come into Diasporal Rhythms put it together, that's great too. I'm expecting that my collection will be donated to an institution, and it could be my institution.
Cool. I like that. All right, John, the ball's yours.
Real quickly, Patrick, how do you find your artists?
Good number of
Mark talked about that. You know, from people, other people. So how do you find the artists?
One of the biggest ways in which I am brought my attention to new artists is through other artists. They will, like I said, artists come by here and they'll bring somebody else. And that artist will then say, well, can I show you my work? And I'll say, yeah, I'll look at it. The second major way is studio tours. Is that our organization, we like as collectors to go as kind of like small groups to an artist's studio and visit and have them talk to us about their techniques, their concepts, what they're working on, their series. And also, because we love to collect, we like looking over in the corner and see what you got over there. And a lot of transactions are made in the artist studio. And again, when we go on these artist studio tours for a particular artist, usually there's another artist that happens to be there, and again, says, I'd like to show you some work. A third is the shows, the gallery shows, academic shows, community art center shows. And less important for me is the art fairs. I'm not, in Chicago, I tend not to pay too much attention to the art critics, and I do go to the museum shows, but I'm not finding artists there. I'm basically getting a knowledge of other artists through direct interaction with other human beings. First and foremost, artists, and second, from other collectors. Because when I go to a collector's home, that's what I'm looking for. I'm expecting that collector to show me something that an artist that I'm not aware of. Because we do that type of sort of intellectual exchange. Thanks.
Amy, I'm going to ask your own question. Amy, go ahead.
Patric, this is all fascinating, and I'm just dying to see your collection. What's the best way to contact you? Email, or through LinkedIn, or through Paul?
All of the above. All of those work.
Okay.
I can give you an email address. It's my name, Patric McCoy.
There's no K in Patric's name anywhere.
And at mac.com. And you can call me up, send me a message and give me some dates. I'm retired. I'm busy, but I'm retired. So I have the flexibility, mornings, afternoons, evenings, weekends, it doesn't matter.
Say that again. It's Patric.
And I actually enjoy showing. I actually enjoy it.
Okay. Paul, do you have the email?
Yeah, it's not hard. Patric McCoy, PATRIC MCC, that's a lot of C's, OY, at mac.com. No K's anywhere.
Thank you.
And you know what? I'm going to post it. I'll post it up here too, so that we can, email bomb Patric.
No, I won't do that.
No, I'm kidding. I'm losing. You guys who've already asked questions, take your hands down. I think Gina. So Michael, I think unless you have another question, you need to take your hand down. Gina, I'm calling on you. Gina?
Yeah. Oh, what?
Do you want to ask a question?
Sorry. No, thanks.
Okay, cool.
No, I got my hand up.
Yeah, I noticed you got it down right as soon as I picked on you. All right. So we've gotten no other questions. So Patric, can you measure the growth, the change that you guys have affected in the last decade?
Well, yes.
I keep saying you guys, but there are women involved in this thing too, aren't there?
Oh, most certainly. In fact, we started 50-50.
Okay.
2 women collectors, 2 male collectors. And I take it very serious that we should continue in that mode of having as close to equal participation in this important activity of males and females. Because we tend to think that all the major collectors are males, and that is just so wrong. That is so wrong.
Aren't there a lot of couples?
Yes, but I'm talking about females that are collecting by themselves.
Okay. Now, what's the difference between where you were as a group 10 years ago and where you are now?
Well, 10 years ago, we were 4 people, and now we're 40 and growing, and we have...
Yeah, but what have you done? How's the community different? How are people's collections different? How are the artists different?
The collections are expanding. Is that like most people have several hundred pieces in their collections. They are bringing their friends into the fold. They're constantly introducing their friends to the activity of art collecting, and the spiel of that people should redefine art collector and think of themselves as art collector is now spreading through the South Side of Chicago.
That's not a neighborhood that's particularly known for having collectors in the history of...
That's not true. That's not true.
It's not known in my purview.
That's what you're saying. You have, because you didn't even know about the artist.
Okay, next point.
Which
all right,
why,
I'm guilty. See what I mean about Patric being my mentor?
And we're having what was said with Mark, that there is a recession and the gallery system is collapsing, and it is collapsing on the South Side too. And we're stepping up. We're essentially the center of really most of the activity of the art on the South Side of Chicago, because the galleries have disappeared.
You know, my purpose in life has become, you know, to enable more artists to be in a better condition and more creative, so that they can help our sick society and improve, you know, my life and the world. And I think that your Diasporal Rhythms group has pumped a hell of a lot of money into a lot of artists in Bronzeville and the extended South Side. And I haven't heard you say that, but I think you deserve, you know, significant acknowledgement for keeping the candle lit.
Well, thank you. There's a lot more money going into it, but most of those people are still very private. We're trying to pull them out. We want to get more people that, I think if you were to take a look at the demographics of the people in Diasporal Rhythms versus the art collectors on the South Side, we're like a middle slice. They're people that have some serious money and are acquiring, but they don't want to be identified as that. We're trying to chip away and show it is acceptable and to be identified as an art collector, because it's going to be beneficial to the larger society if people are saying the visual arts are important. And I'm a strong proponent that it is of the utmost importance for the viability of the democracy, is that we need to promote critical thinking. And at the essence of looking at visual art is to force you to think critically. And so we want to get our young people to think critically. We want people that come into our homes to think and discuss in critical fashion. We want people to go into houses of faith and have the important issues visually manifest in their faith. And we believe that the institutions of our community should also have the images that are important. And in fact, when you, the man that was asked about the Islamic and Muslim art, I totally support that. Is that America is so pluralistic that we should be seeing a lot of different things, because we have such a diverse populace.
Agreed. Are you meeting any resistance anywhere? Are there people who won't join? Are there people who are opposed to what you're doing? I mean, you can have some people who won't join because they're private. That's not resistance. That's
not resistance. There's a resistance of some people to recognize themselves as art collectors, even though they're acquiring art and have significant acquisitions. there's something about not being comfortable with the definition. That's one of our major impetus, is to get people to redefine in their heads what an art collector is. Because when we look across at another cultural phenomenon, music, people don't have any problem identifying themselves as music collectors or book collectors or collectors of fashion or theater buffs and so forth.
Well, how do you define a collector?
What we do in our group,
how do you define collector?
In Diasporal Rhythms, we say if you have 7 original pieces of artwork by artists of African descent, you are a collector in our organization.
Okay.
Because the majority of the 308 million people in America don't own any original work. If they have art, it is posters, some photographs that they took of the family they got on the wall, or some commercial prints. We're interested in people going to the artist and getting original work and getting that relationship established, having that direct interaction with the creative people in our society.
I think that's exciting. All right, David has a question. I'm sorry, David has a question. Maybe I interrupted you, Patrick.
No, go ahead.
I'm unmuting you, David, because are you doing it simultaneously? Unmute. It's not working, David. You unmute yourself. See if that works. No. Well, Patrick, we need to keep talking.
Okay. I think somebody else wanted to ask a question.
I don't know. David, if you want to type your question, I'll ask it. I'm not sure why it's not working. And then your camera's off. Do you think? Go ahead, Patrick.
I think Kathy wanted to ask a question.
You do? Kathy, do you want to ask a question? You're unmuted. Go ahead. Oops, remuted. Unmuted. Yes.
I was actually had my artwork in a frame shop, and I'm just wondering, have you ever heard of a galleryist? His name is Andre Gachard. Patrick?
Yes.
Do you know Andre?
Yes, I have.
Okay, because he's been selling some of my paintings, and I find him very active. I mean, I've never, I don't know him really well. He saw some of my work in a frame shop and liked it, and my framer gave him my paintings without asking me, believe it or not, which was okay. It worked out well because he sold some of my paintings, but he has a gallery, and he's so active, and he's on the south side, and he's bringing a lot of the artwork to the community there, and I've never seen anybody so proactive before. I mean, I just was wondering if you were a part of him at all.
Well, not a part of him, but is that I've been going to his gallery from the very beginning. Andre Gachard is also an artist, and he was one of the honored artists by Diasporal Rhythms in 2006. He was part of the 5 that we selected in that time period from out of our collections. He is really the only active gallery left on the south side. And so, yes, there's a lot of activity going on there. I'm surprised that somebody took your work and gave it to her, though.
Yeah, he saw my work in this frame shop and liked it, and my framer just gave it to him. And
wow.
And I was a little shocked at first because I didn't know who he was, and then I was like, well, okay. And I guess he travels around. He travels to Atlanta. He goes all around. So it turns out that it just so happened to work out that he was a wonderful person.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I mean, I've had only 2 other dealers, and I've had trouble with galleries and dealers not being able to pay me money that they owe me, and this has added up to several $1,000s. And I've gotten burnt by galleries before, and so I have a trust issue, you know, unfortunately.
Right.
So I like to communicate with collectors, and I find that when I have a relationship with a collector, it's just always such a good experience for me.
Right. Andre, the Gallery Guichard is very active in selling, and they have been in the forefront of introducing the young professionals that have not typically gone to the gallery scene, have been introducing them to a number of artists and getting them to open up their wallets and start to purchase original art. He does a very good job in that.
Yeah, I do get that.
One of the things that you introduced about the problems of artists and gallerists and not getting paid and this and that. So I hear that so often, and it really hurts my heart because I feel so strongly that the artists are underappreciated in America already, and then to have a system that takes advantage of them and does not compensate them, it just really upsets me. And I hear it too often, which is one of the reasons why we came together as art collectors to form Diasporal Rhythms, and also why we tend to like going into the environments where artists can interact directly with collectors for transactions, so that it is no question you are getting paid for your work. Because what you've described, I've heard at least 25 times from individual artists saying how the gallerists somehow did not pay them for work that they sold.
You know, as you guys find galleries, you know, not automatically do you want to be with every gallery that wants to be with you, no more than you want to sleep with every person that wants to sleep with you. You know, one of the questions to ask is, of other artists in the gallery, is, you know, do they pay their artists properly, punctually, timely, you know, within what period, of what frame period? I mean, if a gallery is interested in you, it is an intelligent thing to ask other people with that gallery and get a sense of what kind of relationship you're going to have. I think most galleries in Chicago are pretty damn honorable. And I think most galleries everywhere are, but I think there's a larger percentage outside Chicago that are not as honorable as those are here. But regardless, you know, you should not assume that you want to be with somebody just because they want to be with you.
I would agree. And add that in my perfect world, collectors would be making recommendations to the galleries that here are some artists that we are interested in, we have invested in, that we are interested in promoting, and you should take these artists and put them into your stable and take them to the next level. That's how I see the flow. It should be bubbling up, and that collectors should be speaking to make that recommendation for the legitimate and honorable galleries to take these artists on to the next level.
So, you know, maybe active would have been more appropriate than aggressive, but I think it would have been misconstrued. And I think the kinds of roles that Patric shows, you know, other art collectors will be following suit. As, you know, I mean, I don't know. I haven't been that aware of Patric that long, and he's still capable of educating me, damn it. And, you know, I guess where I'm headed with this is I'm wrapping this up, Patric. You know, you've been wonderful. You're exemplary. You're accessible. You make a huge difference to the art world. I think you're a fabulous human being. You know, if you ever need a letter of recommendation, call on me. You'll get a damn good one. Yeah. I think you're great. Anybody want to fire up a last question or anything before we wrap this evening up? Gina, take it away.
Do you have any members of your group in the San Francisco Bay Area, in Oakland or anything?
No, we don't. We have had a reception for artists that came from that area. Salon 10 came, gosh, about 3 years ago. That's a group collaboration in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay. And we also had a reception for Emory Douglas, who was the Minister of Culture for the Black Panther Party. And he was in town for their 40th anniversary, and we hosted a reception for him. We don't have any members out that way yet. Our members are spreading. We've got people in Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, and some the suburbs of Indiana. But we haven't gotten to the West Coast yet with our membership. But we are looking to have the organization expand nationally. But we've got to first get a strong foundation here in Chicago.
There's another Diasporal Rhythms group. Is that the name of it, in Miami?
Not familiar with that.
When I get another email from them, I'll forward it to you.
Okay.
I do. I get it periodically.
Diasporal Rhythms?
I thought that was the name of it. Let me just see if I can. Diaspora Miami.
Okay.
Diaspora Vibe.
Okay. No.
You know, it's Vibe Rhythms. That's close. Diaspora Vibe Gallery, offering support and exhibition opportunities to emerging artists from Latin American and Caribbean.
No.
I guess that's different.
Yep. We're collectors.
Then there's also the Black Crossroads, the African diaspora in Miami. Diverse groups of the African diaspora come, whatever. I don't know. I'm going to spend more time on Google. Patric, thank you so much. I'm certain that you're going to be seeing some of these people at your home. You know, maybe open the door right now and see if anybody's out there. This has been really great. I love what you do. I love you. You're a fabulous human being. You're a fabulous guy. I'm unmuting everybody so that we can all say thank you in unison. Patric, thank you very much. Good night. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks again. And I'll see a bunch of you over the weekend and on Monday and Wednesday. We're busy. Take care, all. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.